I'm Liz Hector, and I'm the Project Skills Mentor. I have a regular series on this program called The Secret of My Success. And more importantly, it's the secret of your success. I want to make you successful. And today we have a good friend of mine, Aisha, who actually is a UX designer. And a couple of months ago, I wrote a blog about day in the life of a UX designer. So I'd like to talk to Aisha and find out what's the secret of her success, UX designer. Hi, Aisha. Welcome to the program.
Hey Liz, it's great to be here today.
What's the secret to your success?
I think to keep it simple, I would say think outside of your role, stay curious, and keep learning. I've never been someone that wanted to stay really neatly in my role, and I've always really loved learning about other job roles that I work closely with, so that we can basically better support each other and that, the work result is better. So that's led me to just keep learning skills that changed my career path in UX.
How did this career start for you?
My study program is really what set the tone for my career and the role that I basically eventually specialized in, which is UX. So I went to an art school in New York called Parsons School of Design, and it really allowed a lot of flexibility to explore a combination of skills, because basically the program that I was joining was called Design and Technology. So it was a mix of a foundation of graphic design, but I also learned a lot of front end programming. I also had the freedom to kind of mix in video, motion, sound design, even a little bit of animation. So when I graduated from that department, I had this very broad skill set. And what I ended up specializing in was it kind of best equipped me to start in what was at the time more like front end web designer roles. And at the time that had UX and UI really lumped in together. So I'd say it wasn't really about until about 4 years into my career that I started focusing on UX specifically. But what was really interesting with that start is that I carried with me from the beginning that idea of like just to keep learning and adding new skills and not to be worried about changing your skill sets.
And Parsons' very famous school, Project Runway, was a lover of that program, and Parsons was always named. It's more than just fashion. That's what I've learned today. What's been the biggest impact on your career so far?
Two things. Really, first, developing that love for user feedback. I've always been interested in getting user feedback, but especially sometimes early on in your career, you're kind of maybe a bit nervous to get that direct feedback on something that you've built. And sometimes you also don't know the best way to approach getting feedback. So just learning different ways that you can get user input and feedback, and then knowing when to use different methods has really been critical to my projects. And then with that, also building close relationships. And that really means with everyone possible, stakeholders, product and marketing managers, researchers, developers, really everyone involved in a project, especially you can tell the ones who really care about the end product, and building close relationships will really help go a long way. Thinking of them as kind of my extended team and involving them throughout my work always led to better results and also faster alignment, which eventually means getting a better product in the hands of users sooner.
That sounds like lessons learned is buried in that. Can you break out for us what your key lesson learned was so far from that experience?
Building close relationships will help you end up with a better product, and it'll help your learning along the way.
How has that influenced your success? Once you've learned that lesson about making connections and making them deep and meaningful, how does that relate to your success?
What's interesting with that is that I actually got to learn new skills that maybe I wouldn't have been as interested in learning. So it not only helped develop my career, but also it's fun. You end up working more closely with your colleagues, and it ends up for a better environment, a better result. Everyone is kind of all hands on deck in the project. So it's not only building your career, but having a good time along the way.
It's important, isn't it, to enjoy what you do, and the creativity does not flow if you're feeling blocked, right?
Exactly.
The advice you'd give others, and maybe you could talk a little bit about the advice you'd give yourself in the past, but advice you'd give a new person who wants to become a UX designer on the kinds of skills or maybe tools they need to learn.
So in terms of what advice I'd have for myself now, that's a really good question. I think it would be just going back to the very first question we had, again, thinking outside of your role, staying curious and keep learning. Those are things that I've learned will really serve me my whole career. And it's basically what I just plan to keep doing, because it's how I've constantly springboarded from maybe one specialty to the next. For example, I started in a more general UX route, but the closer I got to researchers and really learning their process, I came to really love that work. And now I actually have specialized more in a combination of UX research and strategy, in which you can also plug into everything that you've kind of started off with as a UX base. And that's the advice I would also give to anyone starting off. Really try a lot of things. Don't worry so much about being a generalist at first. That will really help you to kind of pay attention to what you're enjoying most, what seems to come most naturally to you. And then you can start to choose which areas you want to maybe specialize in a little bit deeper. But that initial kind of diving into many different areas of UX will really help you grow. It'll help you to have more empathy for all the different types of designers you're working with, because UX design is still a fairly large bucket. You can specialize in different areas. And yeah, then it'll really help you to kind of fine tune in what is the best choice for you. Yeah, and as for skills, I always like to think of skills as both soft skills and hard skills. So you want the soft skills are always going to take you, I think, the furthest.
One of the things I really agree about hard and soft skills is that we think of hard skills when we're talking about doing things like UX and UI, such as the ability to run a workshop and get all the information about the user journey, persona, etc.
Yeah.
But the ability to have soft skills like communication, strategic skills, the ability to problem solve, the ability, as you've said, to think beyond. Those are all skills that are really important. And in fact, I've got a video and a blog about hard and soft skills, and even a way to measure yourself for your hard and soft skills, because it is so key to project management, but also UX and UI design.
Definitely.
And then in terms of tools, did you learn some specific tools as part of your Parsons work, or have you learned different tools along the way? I can imagine that in a low code world, we're seeing a shift in the kind of tools necessary for the job. Is that right?
Actually, interesting story with that, and then a good lesson is don't get too reliant on one set of tools. Tools are constantly shifting in our field. I studied already 12 years ago, so at the time, even in my 4 years of study, there was a shift. I've started off with Flash, where it was in the heyday of Flash. I was learning action scripting, and about 3 years into my studies, Flash was almost completely done. And I had to pivot my thesis project to developing it all just with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I only actually started learning prototyping tools a couple years into that. And I think I can count at least 3 or 4 different prototyping tools that I've used along the way. Design tools are the same, going from the Adobe suite to Sketch to Figma, and then sometimes back to one of those, depending on the company that you're working with and the tools that they like to use. So relying more on how do you use those tools rather than worrying too much about the specific tools you use will also help to keep you flexible, and it'll make learning any new tool that comes up easier as well.
I'm really seeing that in the industry too, that there's a real shift in terms of some of the skill sets you need and some of the skill sets you don't need as much. Last question for today is, what's next for you? It's
interesting. I'm kind of at a new stage in my career with now over 10 years. I definitely noticed at that 10-year mark, there is a shift. I've now switched from working full-time in a company to working freelance as a consultant. So my focus is in 2 areas. One, on community. So definitely focusing more on mentorship, not only for those entering as UX designers, but also staying closely connected to my peers. Mentorship is as much about learning yourself as it is about helping others. And then for the rest, I'm really focusing on consulting and helping companies diagnose problems. I've tried, like I said, I've tried a bit of everything, helping build products from the ground up or helping companies to improve on problems that they've identified. And I've really learned that that latter is my sweet spot as well. So really working more on the UX research and strategy to help companies improve on problems that they've identified. So yeah, again, like I said, try lots of different things.
Thanks for that. That's a great way to understand. Secret of your success is continuous learning and this upward trajectory from going from a single contributor to a consultant. And there's a lot of growth in that area. I was looking at Indeed.com and saw that the average salary for a UX designer in the States right now is about $94K, with an upward trend of a person of your skill set to $150,000 a year. Of course, that might be lower in some parts of Europe, but it's a growth area. We all need to be thinking about the future state of our jobs, something to keep in mind for all of us. And if you want to see more about UX design and how you can learn more about what it takes to be a UX designer, check the link below. And I'll see you next time on ProjectSkillsMentor.com. Bye-bye, everybody.